Hello everyone and welcome to today's episode of the Shredding Skeptic, where I thought it would be nice to take a quick trip back to Dying Light with the newly released expansion pack, The Following. So why don't you join me while we dive right back into this great game and discuss a little bit of an interesting topic and why it is that we can be overly stressing about situations that we can't necessarily control, such as the one that Kyle Crane finds himself in Dying Light. The article that's going to be supplementing our gameplay footage today is called The Stress of Uncontrollability, found on Psychology Today, published back on February 10th of 2016. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the psych talk, I did want to welcome you guys back to Dying Light. This game does hold a special place in my heart as being one of the first games that actually inspired me to start making YouTube videos. And as I look back on the old video now, it really reminds me of the early experimentation with video editing as well. So I am glad to jump back into this with some new content, and it does seem that the open world has become, well, opener, for lack of a better word. As you can see, the developers have introduced this idea of this dune buggy that you can drive around in as well, to cut down on a bit of the travel time in this even more open version of the open world game that took place in Haran. Now, this is actually supposed to double the size of the original map, but as you can see, a lot of it is just going to be literally just open fields full of grass and zombies, so I think that may be a little bit of a cop-out for the developers to say it's twice the size. It's like, well, geographically they're probably not lying, but really it's just a lot of fields, fences, and the like. There is the nice addition of a bow and a compact crossbow that you can craft as well, which will give you a few more stealth options, as well as some explosive arrows if you are not so interested in those stealth options. You're also able to level up your driving skill as well, which will give you access to better upgrades for your vehicle. And that reminds me, at this juncture I should probably make note of how much this game reminds me of Mad Max at this point, now that it's introduced this upgradable vehicle system and really just driving around beating the crap out of everything. But whatever updates the developers have made in between now and the last time I played this, the combat definitely feels as satisfying as ever, and we're going to try to show you some of those zombie smashing highlights in our usual triple screen format. If this is the first time you're joining me here on the Shredding Skeptic, the reason the format looks this way is because this game is being played in a triple monitor format, and when you capture it, it results in this ridiculous letterboxing. So ridiculous, in fact, I can fit 2 more game streams in there for you to watch as well. So if you guys are bored with one stream, simply view another at your leisure. Now, I figured that the zombie apocalypse here would prove to be a suitable backdrop for our discussion of the stress of uncontrollability. Kyle Crane obviously is finding himself in a rather absurd circumstance that may not parallel life directly, but I know that often many of us find ourselves the victim of circumstances that are beyond our control, and some people seem to respond to this better than others, and I believe that this article from Psychology Today does highlight why this may be. So let's fade in some zombie smashing beats and dive right into this article. Now, the research cited within this article seems to indicate that the more we focus on circumstances out of our control, the more out of control we tend to feel due to a spike in activity within the amygdala, which is part of the emotional center of our brain. Now, there is still a lot of research going on as to what function the amygdala does serve, but it seems to be indicated in a lot of anxiety and fear responses. For a shorthand, you can probably just refer to this as your oh shit gland in the brain. So whenever something happens that causes you to go oh shit, that's probably the amygdala at work. And when we focus less on the things that we can't control, we're also going to show a decrease in activity in an fMRI, for example, in that amygdala structure. And for people that are heavily predisposed to anxiety as just a general rule of functioning, well, trying to ignore circumstances that are out of your control may in fact make things worse, according to the author here. They cite some research from 2004 by Bishop, who basically found that as subjects were told to stop paying attention to things, they could actually show reduction in amygdala activity, but this didn't work for everybody. So if you just happen to have an amygdala that fires way more often than most people, actually paying attention to these circumstances may actually give you that sense of control back. So that may be one of the things that accounts for this discrepancy. Now, our protagonist here in Dying Light seems to have an amygdala and seems to work quite well for keeping his level of fear under control. Now, not everybody is Kyle Crane, obviously, so what exactly is the takeaway from this article from Psychology Today? Well, the article concludes by giving the rather obvious-sounding advice of, if a stressful circumstance is innocuous enough and can be ignored, then maybe just take advantage of that and ignore it. However, if you are already on high alert, it might be best to investigate those feelings to figure out exactly what is going on. Now, I'm of the opinion that anxiety has got a bit of a negative reputation as of late, and it seems that many people feel that the presence of anxiety in and of itself is a problem. And of course, there are many products designed out there and marketed to mitigate anxiety. But anxiety is really just a feeling. It's a response that the emotional parts of your brain are having to the environment that you find yourself in. The mechanisms that this is based on are purely of survival instinct and would have evolved from all of the individuals who use their anxiety as a way of protecting themselves from their environment, because those who failed to do so would not likely have survived. And it is possible for your anxiety system to become overactive like a problematic thyroid, but I think the other side of that is equally as dangerous when people do their best to ignore and mitigate their anxiety using all sorts of either rationalizations or pharmaceutical interventions to try to just put this feeling out of sight, out of mind, without really taking the time to figure out what it is that that feeling may be trying to tell you. And I don't want this to necessarily be a knock on anti-anxiety pharmaceuticals in and of themselves, because they really do what they say on the box. They just reduce your anxiety, but this may not be the most effective intervention for you if your anxiety is really just trying to inform you about something in your environment. If somebody's daily routine exposed them to bright light constantly, it probably wouldn't be an effective surgical or pharmaceutical intervention to try to give them something to reduce their eyesight. It might be more effective to either reduce the light in their environment or just suggest they wear sunglasses. I know these are kind of apples to oranges comparisons, but what I'm saying is, the systems that are built into your mind are built to inform you about the environment. And choosing to ignore these signals may be comfortable, but it's not going to give you an accurate representation of reality. I don't wish to come across as sounding callous, as I can certainly understand and appreciate the impetus that may cause people to cover up a lot of the signals that all is not well. Many of the traditional threats experienced by our species have largely been eliminated in the First World, and the majority of problems that we seem to be facing now are of the more existential nature. I think maintaining perspective is important, and that's one of the reasons I enjoy Dying Light so much, because it allows us to experience the life of a man who has it so much worse than all of us. So thanks for joining me on today's episode of The Shredding Skeptic. We'll see you next time.